All right, good morning, everybody. There we go, thank you. More coffee is required. This is awesome. Welcome to day 3 of Google I/O, what I believe will be the best day of Google I/O, although they've all been great. My name is Bob Borchers. I lead marketing for Android, Chrome, Google Play, a few other things along the way. But I'm super excited today to spend some time with you and to bring all of you together to think about the future, which is 5G. And before I get started, I want to acknowledge that 5G, like many technologies, requires a vibrant ecosystem and cooperation across all of the elements, including, of course, you as a developer community. But in particular, I want to thank Qualcomm for joining us today and spending some time talking about the technology. And then we've had great partnership with a number of our OEMs and carrier partners, including Verizon and Sprint, as well as Ericsson. And then from the handset side, Motorola, Samsung, LG, Oppo, Xiaomi, OnePlus, all these folks have come together to put on an amazing demonstration of 5G over in the Android area, and then also to present the technology to you guys here today. So it's really an ecosystem that's coming together, and frankly, what we want to do today is help you become part of that vibrant ecosystem and kind of move things forward. We're super excited about 5G because it's not just a step change and not just a incremental change in wireless technology, but we really believe it is a fundamental kind of step change. And it's because it's going to provide multi-gigabit speeds, low latency, high reliability, and frankly, the opportunity to do brand new things for users and for the ecosystem. And that's where you and your creativity come in, and we hope to tap into that this morning. When we talk about 5G, we think about it as really the future of mobile. It's not, like I said, just the next incremental step, but it really is a step change in a number of ways. And it's high gigabit speeds, it's latency, it's a number of things, it's edge compute. And we think it'll unlock some really interesting things like, for example, this AR image, where you can imagine having very low latency access to the Google Knowledge Graph and be able to bring it up in visually compelling ways. So suddenly you have this visual search metaphor to the rest of the world, to the physical world using your phone. And Google Lens and AR are just pieces of the pie, pieces of the opportunity, but there are many, many more. And if we think about 4G, and go back 10 years to when that technology was just coming in, imagine all of the things that have in fact been unlocked and created by being able to bring together LTE networks, devices, platforms, and creating all of these new use cases, whether it's Uber, Airbnb, Twitch, Netflix, all these things that could only become possible as you got to 4G. 5G is going to unlock even more, and that's where you guys come in. Your creativity, your energy, all of that is going to be what fuels kind of 5G for consumers. And this is an opportunity for you to tap into probably one of the most exciting areas within wireless, and one which operators and handset OEMs and all sorts of people are just dying to make use of. So you've got a great opportunity to come in and help invent the future with 5G. So today's session is maybe going to be a little different than what normal I/O sessions are in terms of being, kind of a sit-back experience. This is going to be a lean-forward experience, and we want you guys to get engaged and hopefully create the future right here, or at least start to do it right here this morning. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about what is 5G and getting everybody up to the same level of understanding in terms of what it is, why it is, how it's rolling out. We're also going to talk a little bit about how to build for 5G, some of the APIs that we're opening up within Android Q to be able to allow you to access and understand what's happening from a network perspective. We'll then talk a little bit about how we, Google, are thinking about 5G, maybe just to stimulate a little bit of thinking on your part. But then most importantly, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about and helping you think about how do you make use of 5G within your domain, within your set of applications. And maybe it's games, maybe it's AR, maybe it's messaging, maybe it's something completely brand new. And we want to help you explore that. And today we've got the privilege of having somebody who was at Google fairly recently, but has now gone off and become an expert on design thinking. And he's going to be the moderator for the rest of the morning and is going to help us think about how to apply 5G in new and interesting ways using a design thinking process. So hopefully today you get not only a better understanding of 5G, get excited about developing for it, but you also get to access these amazing design thinking tools and be able to apply them in your own work and in what you do every day. So without further ado, thank you for coming to I/O. Thank you for coming to the session. And let me hand it off to Xander.
Great. Thanks, Bob. All right. Thanks, Bob. So as Bob mentioned, today's going to be a little bit different. We're going to be practicing activities from a book called Sprint. Sprint was invented not far from here at Google Ventures, and it's a 5-day workshop that they use to help their investments like Uber, Slack, Flatiron Health build better products and test new ideas. It was so successful, they wrote this book outlining the process, and now teams and consultancies all over the world use this process. The big idea is to build a prototype as fast as you can and get feedback from users before you invest a lot of time and energy into building it. So a design sprint is 5 days. We only have the morning together, so we're going to be using a selection of those methods from the book to help you think in 5G and figure out how to apply all this new technology to your applications, your apps, and experiences. So here's what it's going to look like. We're going to first inspire ideas with lightning talks. We'll look at 5 examples of apps and features that do really, really well on 5G. Your job is to jot down or sketch anything that stands out to you. Next, we're going to spend time drawing ideas. You'll have time to sit with a pen and paper and apply what you've learned to your own app. We're basically going to be drawing user interface flows, and you'll learn a fast, effective, easy way to do that. And finally, we're going to share the best ideas as a group. Now, I've been a consultant for the last 3 years. I work with companies like Fitbit, Cisco. I've worked with Google a bunch before. And I always say that execution is everything. So you really shouldn't be worried about sharing your ideas at this point. We're still pretty early in this ecosystem, and we're going to get a lot more benefit from sharing than we will holding on tight. I know that I learned how to be a great designer and entrepreneur from other people who shared their ideas with me, so I hope we can do that this morning. Now, if you don't want to share your idea, that's totally fine too, but the last part of the workshop will be to share so we can all learn and grow together. To help along the way, there's going to be Google 5G team members who will be roaming during each of the activities. So you can ask them questions and get their feedback and get some help. So before we get into the workshop part, let's get our feet on the ground by starting with an overview of 5G. Here's Hassan.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. So let's just start off with what is 5G. 5G is the next generation of cellular technology. It's a new set of standards. It's an entirely new set of capabilities accompanied by network equipment, device chipsets, and capabilities. And we break it down into kind of 3 fundamental aspects that give you an idea of what 5G is about. First and foremost, it's more speed. And it provides this increased speed by liberating new swaths of spectrum. And what you find is there are different types of deployments, some of which happen in really high bandwidth or in high frequency spectrum, so that tends to come out in high speeds in localized areas, usually referred to as millimeter wave. And there are other swaths of spectrum that are referred to as mid-band, which provide high speeds over somewhat larger distances. And these in combination let you run a lot more throughput for a given user. But the fundamental aspects of the technology also mean that it's more efficient in terms of how it transports bits over the air for a given amount of spectrum as well. So it's more spectrally efficient across the board in different parts of the radio frequency spectrum. The second aspect of 5G is that it's more robust. So there are many improvements on the underlying radio technology itself that mean that in a given coverage area, more users have access to peak speeds more of the time. We'll talk a bit more about how that happens, but it means that when you're connected to a 5G network, you have a much more consistent experience while you're connected. And finally, it's more responsive. So again, many optimizations have been made into the standards and technology that mean that the latency is substantially lower on a 5G network, which is particularly relevant to applications that are intensive in terms of bandwidth and content. But it also has a lot more flexibility built into the network core itself that allows programmability of how applications and networks interact with one another. So that's kind of a super high-level view of the kind of main tenets of 5G. But to put it in perspective, it's actually here and alive right now. What you'll find is many operators are going to be launching this in 2019 across the globe, and it's first on Android. We have operator partners launching in the US, Europe, Southeast Asia, and Asia Pacific, with a large set of OEM partners who are also going to be launching with Android this year. Now, with that, I'm going to actually hand over to Francesco, who's one of the foremost experts in the field, to tell us more.
Okay, thank you. So I'm Francesco Grilli. I work at Qualcomm, where I am responsible for the modem technology product management. So essentially, it's my job to, for example, to forecast when is the new generation of cellular technology is going to happen. As you can see, that part of the job is pretty easy because every 10 years, almost like clockwork, we have a new generation of technology. Now, why is every 10 years? Well, there are two main factors that are pushing the generations to happen every 10 years. New spectrum becomes available, typically every 10 years, and also technology, the low power processing gets good enough for a new transition. And so that's why we see that from 3G to 4G, we went from 100 of kilobit per second to megabit per second, 100 of megabit per second with the 4G, which, by the way, kept evolving after the initial launch in 2010. And now we are having devices that are 1 gigabit per second of peak rate. 5G will bring the peak rate in the order of 5 to 10 gigabit per second. However, thanks to this evolution of the technology, now we have not only a lot of new spectrum that is available now that was not available before, but we also have advanced antenna technologies that allow the spectrum to be used more efficiently. So the reason why 5G, as has been explained before, it's an inflection point, it's not just a linear improvement with respect to previous generation, is that with the new antenna technologies allow to use the full spectrum on a narrow beam toward one user. So, for example, on a regular cellular system of 4G and before, you have a base station where you have 3-sector antenna. Each sector covers 1/3 of the area around the base station, right? Every user inside that cell has to share the spectrum with everybody else in that cell. With the 5G, you will have, on each sector, you will have hundreds of antenna elements which can be used to focus a beam directly toward a particular user and then can track the movement of that user dynamically. And if another user is present in the same sector, a separate beam can be focused on that user as well. And both users can have access to the full spectrum. So essentially, imagine now you have new hundreds of megahertz of new spectrum, and each user can use all of them. So to make an example on a speed test on 4G and before, typically you never get more than 10–20% of the peak rate that the device is capable of. Instead, with 5G, you are going to get 40–60% of the data rate that the device is capable of, thanks to these beamforming techniques that become available only on 5G. So essentially, this is one of the key innovations of 5G that is made available by the enhancement in processing technologies. Now, if you have to remember anything about 5G, you just have to remember 3 things. Lot of spectrum, as I said, which is not available before. These new antenna techniques that are used to form beams. And the third thing you have to remember is that now you have a lower latency. So what is the lower latency coming from? So essentially, given the new processing power that we can have in a little device, we can now transmit data in a much smaller chunks. So each transmission can be less than a millisecond, which means that not only you can transmit more data in less amount of time, but also you can get the feedback on the recipient that the data has been received or not. So that allows much faster protocol that will reduce the end-to-end delay. So the latency, as we said, is going to be much lower from, let's say, in LT, you get typically 40 millisecond round-trip time when you do a ping, for example, over LT. On 5G, once the network are optimized, you can expect always less than 10 millisecond round-trip time, thanks to this new innovation. So essentially, remember, for 5G, lot of spectrum, new antenna techniques to do beams, and low latency because now the transmissions are very, very short, okay? So, okay, but when do we get all that? Well, we are getting it starting right now. Actually, this is quite exciting because in the past transition from 3G to 4G, the first year there were 4 operators that were about to launch the technology. For 5G, we have already more than 20 operators all launching in this year, 2019. And some operators are not even listed, like Sunrise in Switzerland, that just launched 5G as well last week. So 5G is commercial here in US, is becoming commercial in Korea, is commercial in Korea, it will be commercial in September, pre-commercial in Japan, it will be commercial next week in China. In Europe, it's already commercial. So essentially, all the advanced markets have now deployed 5G. And that is that means that users, the user community, will be able to enjoy these benefits really, really fast. However, we don't know what are the typical users for 5G. Essentially, when we were developing the 4G network 10 years ago, we didn't have a clue that Facebook and YouTube would be the largest data users of 4G networks today, right? So the same way today, we cannot know exactly who's going to take advantage of this. So, for example, these are speed tests run on an Android device, and you can see that already within early launches of the 5G, you already see speeds which are basically off the scale respect to the speed test application. Speed test application goes up to 300, right? At least on the indicator, but we are already double. We are off the scale. So that means that we need new ways to use this technology, which currently can just be dreamed of, and it's up to you guys to figure out how to make it possible. Now, how can Qualcomm help in this? So Qualcomm is helping very closely with Google to make available, to expand an existing API that we already have for LTE to allow the app developer to take advantage of the throughput estimation. So essentially, the modem will do an analysis of the current radio conditions, and based on its own internal algorithm, will provide to the Android API the best estimate of the downlink throughput to be expected in the immediate future, okay? So this is already available today in Android, and this API will be extended in Android Q to also include throughput estimation for 5G network. Now, on 5G, by the way, you are going to see throughput which is 10 times or more than the throughput that you experienced in LTE. That means that, for example, if you see something above 300 megabits per second, it's most likely going to be a 5G connection, right? So 5G awareness for us means that you are going to have a data rate so high that it's basically impossible to have that in previous generations, and you're going to take advantage of that in your application. Now, this is what we are making available today on Android Q, as soon as Q will be available. We are also working with Google to make available additional enhancement to this API So, for example, we are working on the estimate for the uplink throughput, which, of course, some applications care more about uplink than downlink, or both. So right now, the downlink throughput is provided. Uplink will also be provided in a future evolution of this API. And we are also working to make available the latency estimation. Because, for example, if you have an application that can behave differently in low latency mode versus regular latency mode, then you would be able to take advantage of that. So those are not still in work in progress. So I cannot promise that it will be in the first release of Android Q. But for sure, the 5G basic throughput estimation will be included in Android Q. And I think now we can go into the specific details of this API. Thank you.
Thanks, Francesco. So the throughput estimation API is especially helpful right now because 5G networks will roll out over time and performance will be drastically better than LTE. And in many cases, if we see hundreds of megabits per second, that can even be faster than wired broadband for many users. So it breaks the paradigm that Wi-Fi is always faster than cellular and that applications should always prefer Wi-Fi over cellular. So to make decisions about resolution, AR asset quality, or other parameters in a game, etc. And so we want users to use the real-time bandwidth estimate API to make decisions that are fact-based on the actual throughput of the network rather than relying on is it cellular or is it Wi-Fi. Because you can have great LTE networks and you can have poor LTE networks. You can have great Wi-Fi and you can have poor Wi-Fi. This gives you a true objective estimate of what the real-time bandwidth is available and make decisions based on that. Secondly, we added another API around network meteredness that tells you whether or not the cellular network is metered. So we're working with carriers, either to integrate from a cloud point of view or on device via the carrier app, to indicate if that particular user's mobile data plan is metered or not metered. And this can help you take advantage of the cellular network more proactively. So for instance, if you know a user has hundreds of megabits of connectivity, and you know that the network is currently unmetered, and perhaps the user is opted in, then if you're a movie app, you can automatically download the next episode of the TV series or the movie series, all behind the scenes proactively. So that was a quick overview of 5G. We got a sense of what the rollout's going to look like, how the technology works, and what the opportunity is. For the next part, I want to invite Xander up back on stage so we can help brainstorm some of the ways we could use this.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Bhavin. OK, so this is the workshop part. The first thing we're going to do is inspire you with some ideas. So Bhavin and I are going to review a bunch of great experiences to inspire you. Then you're going to have some time to draw ideas. Could be for an existing app, could be for a new app idea that you have. The goal is to take what you find inspiring and apply it there. And then again, we're going to share the ideas as a group. Before we start, are there any questions about the format of the workshop or what we're going to be doing? It's different. This is the first workshop that they've done at Google I/O, so this is a test for us. So if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll just get started.
Good.
Great, perfect job. So you'll need pens and you'll need paper because the demos are going to go kind of fast. And in order to capture it, you're going to want you're going to want to have your paper and pen in front of you. Bhavin, how was your morning?
Good. Good.
Good. Today was bike to work day.
Yeah.
So that was good.
Did you bike in?
I did. Takes me 15 minutes.
Oh,
but
wow.
I don't work at Google, so it doesn't really matter. My wife works here, though. She likes it. She kind of likes it, but all right. She's looking for a new team, if anybody. OK. All right. So lightning talks. We're going to go through some demos. They're not quite demos. They're like pictures of demos. And you're going to write or draw what you find inspiring. So This was an example from when I worked with Fitbit. You can see we drew all the lightning demos up on the board. Everybody took notes about them. This is your private kind of, OK, here's all the things that I can work with. So Bhavin's going to help us out as we talk through each example. So first, the first example of a great experience on 5G is?
Yeah.
Oh, you need the clicker?
Yeah. So a key area where 5G is making mobile user experiences more seamless is in AR, where 5G can help improve the quality and fidelity of the AR experiences. The higher bandwidth and lower latency that 5G provides really means two things for users and developers. First, you'll have lower reduced load times for AR assets and AR experiences, so they can be more seamless and frictionless. As an analogy, if you think back to YouTube, and it worked well on DSL connections, it worked well on pre-4G networks like HSDPA, but it really excelled on LTE. And once LTE was broadly available to most users, using YouTube on the go became second nature rather than just using it at home. And we hope to see similar things when it comes to AR. The second thing is when we talk back to those network throughput APIs that Francesco described, you can use those APIs to improve AR by delivering higher quality assets to users with higher bandwidth connections. So you can imagine users differentiating between users that have hundreds of megabits per second of connectivity, giving them a 100 megabyte AR asset, versus other users giving them a 10 megabyte AR asset, and having similar type of load times, similar type of experience within the application itself. So to get an idea of what the faster speeds mean in terms of load times, let's take a look at AR and search and switch to a quick demo. So let's say we were to do AR and search for a brown bear. We see the result, we can learn about the brown bear, and then we can visit and meet a brown bear up close. So we load the AR asset, we ask to view it in our space, and it loads immediately.
Whoa, cool.
OK. So let's switch back to the slides. That demo was made possible because of 5G.
And you're on 5G now.
Yep, we're on 5G.
Yeah.
So we actually worked with Sprint and LG to provide a 5G network live at I/O. The network is actually all the way by the Android sandbox. But because of the mid-band spectrum, we're actually able to reach and get the signal all the way over here, observe hundreds of megabits per second of connectivity, and load those AR experiences in an instant. Next, if we go into gaming, we also see that AR can have important implications for gaming. So first, gameplay can be shifted from on-device compute more and more to the cloud. This can look at like a hybrid solution initially, where specific algorithms, it could be some GPU rendering, it could be some ML rendering, or maybe some aspects of multiplayer gaming. They could be pushed to the cloud, so you're no longer constrained by the on-device CPU or the on-device GPU, and you can provide more immersive experiences. Of course, the ultimate realization of this is experiences such as Stadia and cloud gaming, where 100% of the compute is done in the cloud, and you can deliver console-level quality on a mobile device. Second, we also see that it has tremendous benefits for competitive online gaming like esports. The low latency can help make games even more responsive. And finally, many applications on Android, especially AAA games, the file sizes can reach from hundreds of megabytes even to multiple gigabytes. So games such as PUBG or Asphalt 9, they're 2+ gigabytes, and that can take quite a bit of time to download, especially on an LTE connection. And if you're trying to acquire more users, that could be relatively imposing, especially if those users are on the go. Because it's going to take quite a bit of time to download and before you can start enjoying that experience. Whereas on 5G, you can download that experience and begin enjoying it all under a minute or two.
Wow.
So two other quick examples, Xander. One is YouTube. YouTube, we've seen that bandwidth gets substantially better. So we're showing this in the Android sandbox. We are downloading an 8K video, which is a YouTube 360 video with the full hemisphere downloads at once. And even then, the video loads in an instant. If you turn on that Stats for Nerds feature in YouTube, you can see the peak data rates spiking well over 100 or 200 Mbps, which helps the buffer fill up immediately, and then you can start enjoying your content. And
so live streaming is way more possible.
Yeah, way more possible with live streaming, even in 4K or 8K. And then the last quick example is around Google Photos, where I'm personally excited. I have a toddler, and oftentimes I will take quick videos of him doing funny things and want to share it with my parents or my siblings. And what I've noticed is with the modern smartphones we have today, even if you take a 1-minute video, that can often be 300 to 400 megabytes, which gets kind of frustrating if you're then trying to send it to family immediately for them to consume it immediately and react to. And so I'm excited about the promise of applications being able to take advantage of that to deliver easier sharing and easier continuous backup and more instant access. And all of these experiences are live at our sandbox, so welcome you to come on by if you haven't already experienced it over the last 2 days and see it for yourself.
Great.
So with that, let me hand off to Xander.
All right. So those were some ideas. Those are all experiences that are working really well on 5G. It's a little bit about how Google is thinking about utilizing 5G. It is now time for your turn to think about that.
Thank you.
I just heard a thank you from the back. So here's what you're going to be doing. Solution sketches. This is a really quick way to get an idea out on paper. It's from the sprint process. It's 3 Post-its on 1 piece of paper, and it's a section of a UI flow. And it's a way to go from abstract, like I have these ideas in my head, to something very concrete that you can show other people. So, for example, in this solution sketch, this was with Fitbit. We're thinking about a new onboarding flow. They have an exercise app called FitStar, and it starts out, the concept was using GIFs instead of video. Because GIFs were, you didn't have to hit play, you didn't have to download so much to just kick off the onboarding. And you can see here that it starts by saying, FitStar gets you to your goal fast and personalized. Tell us about yourself to get started. You enter in a bunch of personal information. Then it's an example of how FitStar helps people like you. So it looks at your age, your weight, your goal, and then it shows a GIF or a testimonial of somebody like you, and then it shows a GIF of them working out. So it's personalized to whatever you put in the first screen. And then lastly is like the upsell. So it says, great, 1 year of this product is cheaper than one month at a gym. Here's the premium pitch, and you can buy 1 year for $39.99, 1 month for $7.99, or you can do a 7-day trial. So you can see that this solution sketch, it's really like crudely drawn. It's really messy, but it gets the idea across. And the big idea there is to use personal, like GIFs that are personalized to the person. And this is actually kind of a cool 5G use case too, because you could download videos before knowing anything about, or you would download the video after you know something about them, and you'd customize the onboarding experience to that person with like super high quality graphics. So this is actually pretty applicable. But anyway, this is the solution sketch. This is the format that we're going to be drawing in. I want to show you another example. This is augmented reality directions. So has anybody here seen that experience on Google Maps? Basically, you get your directions and you switch into AR. So you hit Start AR, and then you hold up your phone and you can see the directions in the real world. So arrows are pointing this way, and there's dots on the ground. And then as you walk, the dots will like move into the road that you need to follow. This is another example of a solution sketch. That idea of AR directions is kind of complicated. It's kind of new, but you can see in just 3 screens, it gets the idea across. It gets the idea out. Now, it's missing a lot of information, but that's OK. A solution sketch is just a single concept. You also notice you can write notes on the side. You can give it a title that explains what it is. And you do whatever you need to do to explain what it is. So the goal is that these are all self-explanatory, because when we share, there's no pitching. You just leave it on your table and walk away, and then other people will walk up and look at it. So the goal is that it could be understood on itself. That way, the best ideas win rather than the best salesperson. I bet if Bob came back and pitched his idea, then everybody would vote for it because Bob is super convincing and compelling. But with this format, you don't know who drew it, and it's more about evaluating the concept. So the goal is that it's self-explanatory. And does that make sense? Great. So it's OK if it's ugly. It's OK if it's rough. It just has to be clear. Any questions before we start? So here are the rules. Ugly is OK. The words really matter. You have to write out all the words in your app or your experience. And it should be self-explanatory, meaning somebody who has no context for what you do should be able to understand it. I'm going to leave this example up here so you remember what it looks like. 3 Post-its, notes, title. And we're going to spend some time sketching. The 5G team and I will be walking around to help you think through some of these concepts. But this is time to apply everything you've seen and start to make progress on thinking about how to use 5G. The goal today is that everybody in this room leaves with 3 ideas about how they might use 5G in the future. So at the end, after we share, you should be able to pick up at least 3 concepts. And this will put you dramatically ahead of competitors and other companies. So with that, we will start our solution sketch. We'll start with 25 minutes on the clock. Feel free to spread out. We'll be walking around. And this is your time to think. All right, team. That brings us to the conclusion of solution sketching. How was it? Great. This is a really helpful activity if you design software for a lot of reasons. It lets you go from abstract to concrete really quickly. Just a few Post-its here. If you screw up, you can rip off a Post-it, throw it away, and do a new one without scrapping everything. And I think as you walk around the room, you'll see how easy it is to explain a pretty complex idea. This is a wonderful example. I don't know who you guys are, but these were really good ideas. I'm excited for our next session, which is to share our ideas, to do some heat map. So thank you for doing solution sketches. Hopefully it was fun and helpful. The next activity is heat map voting. So heat map voting is a voting activity that will help us see which concepts are the best. The way it works is you silently walk around the room and you spend time looking at each idea. You're going to place a red dot on the concepts that you like. So if you like a specific piece of a concept, you put the dot right on it. Or if you like the whole idea, you put it in the corner. And then when you're done, have a seat. And then what we'll see is the solutions with the most dots will rise to the top. And we'll get a heat map of which concepts are resonating with people. So I guess the way we'll do this is if you want to share your idea, put it on the opposite, like on this side of the table, and lay it out in a row, and then put all the supplies and papers on the further side of the table. Does that make sense? OK. And then we'll have time, and you can just you can just walk around and look at each idea and put a dot there. If you don't want to share it, just turn it over and keep it to yourself. If you do want to share, exactly. Hey, you guys already did it. Yeah, just like table 2. Well, table 4. Okay, great. Again, this is our first time doing this, so we're seeing how it runs. Yes, great. So we're going to do the same thing. You can walk around, evaluate them. You have unlimited stickies. So if you really like a concept, put a bunch of dots there. Feel free to move from table to table. The goal here is that you leave with about 3 concepts that you really love. Okay? All right. When the gong rings, we will return to our seats, and then I'm going to ask some of the top concepts here to share their ideas. Okay, team. That concludes heat map voting. Thank you for your time and energy. Heat map voting is great. My favorite part is you don't know who drew what, and there's no pitching. I hate pitching. You really just want the best idea to win, and it was cool to see everybody just silently walk around and evaluate them. And again, really impressive ideas, like really, really impressive. I'm so glad that we're doing this work together. The last activity is to share. So we're going to look at like 3 or 5 of the top concepts. You guys individually walked around, but this is the time to share. So what I want you to do is take your solution and raise your hand if you got more than 1 vote on your solution. Raise your hand if you got more than 1 vote. Yes, a round of applause. That's awesome. As somebody who does this often, I have to admit, even some of my ideas get 0 votes at times. So getting 1 vote is huge. Please count up your number of votes. I want to try and find the top 3 or 5. So count how many votes you'll have, and then we'll go through, 5, 10, 15, 20. We'll see that whole thing. Okay, if you have more than 5 votes, raise your hand. Oh my gosh, that's great. 10 votes. What? 15 votes. 20 votes. 25 votes. 25 votes? We have 2? 3? 3 with 25 or more votes? 4. Oh, we have 4. Is he listening to music? No? Oh, bobbing his head. Okay, 25 or more. 30 votes? Anybody have more than 30? 30 votes, right here. Whoa, what's your name? What is it? You're on? Congratulations. There's really no winner in this exercise, though, because we don't really know what the best concept is. We don't know. We don't have our decider here. We don't know what's going to move forward. We don't know what's feasible. But getting that many votes is a feat. But in my book, really getting more than 1 vote is a feat. So what I want to do now is, if you guys are open to sharing, we have the team here. They have some microphones. If you just wanted to share your concept with the group, I think that would be really cool. We'll get about like 3, maybe 3 here, and then we'll wrap up the session for today. So Yuran, do you want to share your concept because you had the most votes? Sure? Okay, great. Awesome. Bhavin's going to bring you a microphone. So what was your concept?
Hi, I'm Yuan from Japan, and okay,
this is great.
I'm going to pitch my idea. This is I love football, and I love watching football. But in this stadium, I can only watch the game from my side of view.
One angle.
Yeah,
so
just one angle.
You're in a stadium, and right now, today, you can only see it from that one angle.
Yeah. So my idea is there's many camera in the stadium for the all the players. And I can select which one to watch. So that I can. If I love some player, I watch the player every time. And
wow.
Yeah.
So you're in the stadium, and you have your phone, and you can watch a specific player.
Yeah, right.
In real time.
Yeah.
Yeah, during the game.
Yeah, that's
cool.
That's my idea.
Wonderful. Mark Cuban would give you a thumbs up. Awesome.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else want to share? Any of our 25 and up club? Anybody in there want to share? Sure. Let's hear it.
Hi, everyone. I'm Swati from India. I'm also a musician, so my concept revolves around music. We always have a pain point of actually collaborating with other musicians across the globe in real time, so trying to leverage that using 5G. So this is more like a mobile app where I could just say start collaborating, and I've invited participants or musicians with whom I want to collaborate, and I can have a screen share moment where there's no latency or there's no lag. We can actually collaborate in real time, and we can also have this open to audience who can actually watch us perform live. So this is my concept. Thank you.
Hey. So to recap, it was you could play music live.
Yeah.
And so you can finally play music together with somebody who's not with you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So today the way we do it is we kind of record it and then
send it over.
Yeah, send it over. But we want to actually do it real time. So I'm jamming with someone. We can actually have third party or third person users actually viewing our performance in real time without lag issues or latency issues.
Yeah, it's cool. Awesome. Thank you, Swati. Unomas, one more? Who would like to share? Anybody who got one or more vote is free to share if you have a concept. All right.
So I come from South Korea, where there's a culture of leaving notes when you visit a restaurant and you really like the food on the walls. And I thought maybe it would be great if you can use AR to view the notes that people, these virtual notes that people leave up on the walls of restaurants and places that you visit with like a selfie or the picture of a food. So it's kind of like a Yelp transformed in a location-based, AR-based platform that I thought it would be really interesting. So thank you.
Cool. Great. That was a great set of three. I think we'll end there. You guys also got to look at everybody's, so you got to evaluate the ideas on your own. My hope, again, is that you leave here with three concrete ideas about how 5G can impact your app experience or inspire a totally new app, because as we saw, the ecosystem is going to be really big and growing much faster than 4G. So we have a lot to look forward to. In summary, first ever Google I/O workshop started by inspiring ideas with lightning talks. You drew ideas in a format called solution sketches. And then we shared ideas using a process called heat map, where we saw which ideas kind of bubbled up to the top and got the most heat. So, in summary, we've given you some background and context on 5G. We've talked a little bit about the APIs and how eventually you can build for it. We've shared how Google is thinking in 5G, and we've workshopped how to help you think in 5G. So, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your energy. This was a wonderful workshop, a wonderful session. Have a great rest of your day.